Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Life and Sport podcast. This is another guest that we've got on for the Olympics, Paralympics season/year coming up. 2012 Paralympian Amber Merritt. Thank you very much for joining me today. And how's your day going so far?
It's good. It's very well, like it's 8:20 in Perth at the moment, so day is just beginning.
Yeah, but 20 past 8, geez, that's a big sheesh, but that's fair enough. And obviously, everyone's sporting career starts young. Starts at the very basics, whether it's whatever it could be. So my first question for you is, what is your earliest memory of basketball in general?
To be honest, I actually didn't start around basketball at all.
Oh wow,
I didn't
was
even
it
play
was it
it.
swimming that was first?
Swimming was first, but
Hmm.
I also because of my disability, swimming was kind of a hydrotherapy, and
Okay.
I learned how to swim before I learned how to walk properly.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
wow.
because of the
That's
kick.
of
Um,
course. Yep.
so that was like my first sporting memory. And then as I was growing up and I started to get a bit more movement, I was very active. So I tried all sports essentially, like horse riding, skateboarding, through to bike riding, cycling, triathlons.
Wow,
Um,
you did
I
everything.
I tried everything, yeah. And then I moved to Australia and kind of just stuck with swimming because swimming was always the predominant sport. I think
And it's
as
definitely a
children,
predominant sport in Australia as well.
yeah, exactly. And like I think when we look at children in sport and like athletes in particular, there comes a point where you pick one
Oh,
that
absolutely,
you're going
absolutely.
to
Because
push
you,
through.
yeah. And so, just tangenting back into what you just said before, you moved to Australia. So, to anyone who may not know, you're originally from England, in particular Portsmouth, which is where my family is from as well. What was the move like at such a young age, around 9, 10 years old, moving from one country to a totally different culture, new people, new everything, really?
It was very bizarre, and
Was it
it's
scary?
quite yeah, I guess it's daunting because I don't have a massive family.
Okay.
Um, in Australia, it's just mum, dad, and I. Like we
Okay.
had no one else really here apart from some
Wow.
kids. But the
Because
process,
most people who move over from England usually do have a family member or two over here, sort of thing.
yeah. And so my parents actually started the process of immigration very early.
Okay.
It took us about 6 years to get our permanent residency to come over to Australia. So
Okay.
I was very young when that started. And in that time, we actually had a family friend do the same thing. And she moved with her family to Australia three
Same
months
area or to a different part of Australia?
Same area. Yeah,
Okay.
we all came to Perth. So we were really lucky that that happened because we
Yeah.
kind of just slotted in and at least we knew someone.
Yeah, of
Um,
course. Who knew the area-ish for you as
mm,
well? Of course.
yeah, but in terms of like for me personally, it was so long ago it's hard to remember, but I do think like going to a different school and learning a different school system. So
Mm,
in I finished when I left England, I'd actually finished year 6 and I was
yeah.
about to go into high school because in back then year 7 was high school in England.
Yeah.
And when I moved to Australia, because of the differences, I actually had to redo year 6 completely. And I was like,
Mm,
hang on. And then year 7's primary school. So I was like, what is this
yeah.
bizarre world?
Yeah.
But everything else I kind of just fitted in and you kind of just roll with it. It's a whole new adventure and it's really exciting. And, you kind of have a few gripes and complaints to the parents. But if anything, I felt like it was the best decision my parents could have ever made, not just for me as a child and the opportunities that were presented, but also for themselves.
Yeah.
They just were so much more relaxed. They were they seemed happier, way happier, and they enjoy Australia and the heat. And yeah, it's
Yeah.
yeah, very lucky.
That's awesome to hear. Because yeah, there's definitely a lot of goings on wherever you go in the world. But I've spoken to a lot of Brits, a lot of expats, in particular, and they definitely say Australia living in particular is um, a lot more. What's the word? A lot more a better quality of life, for lack of a better term. Without getting political or anything like that. So obviously your earliest memory of basketball isn't basketball. It's, as you said, track and field, it's swimming, it's this, that, the other. So my next question is, at what point, as we just tailed on before that last question, you you came to a crossroads and you had to pick. At what sort of led to that? Like, and at what point did basketball come into the equation?
So it's actually it's a really interesting story, and it's
Okay.
one that a few athletes may have faced in para sport.
Mm-hmm.
So to give a bit of backstory to everyone listening or watching, I was born with a disability called clubfoot. And
Okay.
so
Yep.
when my mum was pregnant with me, my Achilles tendon stopped developing, and it presents differently in everyone. So it can manifest in both feet, it can be one foot, it can be very minor that you just need boots and bar and some physiotherapy, or it could be as severe as needing surgery.
Yeah.
And mine was so severe that I needed to have surgery. And I was born with the big toe of my left foot touching the side of my left leg. So my foot was completely rotated
Wow.
around and up. Yeah.
For some reason, I don't know why, I just moved my foot a bit to sort of just, wow, that's just, I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Sorry, please continue.
So with my condition, even though now I walk,
Yep.
I present as an able-bodied person, but I live with a disability. I am missing most of my ankle joint. My foot, I can't wiggle my toes on my left foot because I've had the tendons cut. I've had tendon releases, missing most of the muscle in the lower part of my left leg. And
Yep.
then because it was only one side that was impacted by the condition, it means
Your
that
other side
everything,
is compensated for.
yeah, so my left side is smaller. So I by the time I was
Your
14,
right side's hench. You could
yeah,
say.
yeah. Well, like even in leg length, like my leg was 8 centimeters shorter by the time I was
Wow.
14. So like there was a lot of things as I was growing up that I had to face. And so with the swimming side, and what had happened was I moved to Australia and I started swimming as a para athlete because I had been classified in England.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, without tooting my own horn, by the time I was 13, I was very successful in swimming.
Wow,
Um,
awesome.
broke about 8 national records. Was
Well,
on my way.
kudos to you. Well done.
Thank you. Um, and so I went to represent WA at the National Day of Difference Junior
Yep.
Disability Games. And that's all sports. That's rugby, tennis, basketball, table tennis,
Everything.
everything was there. And they tapped me, like they pulled me aside and they were like, look, you've been classified, but we actually need to do a national classification for you. And I was like, no worries, all good.
Oh, okay. Is this to be able
And
to compete for Australia or just to be able to compete at this event that you were attending?
to compete for everything. So
Oh,
once you've
wow.
been given your classification at a level, that's it. And then if you go
Okay.
to an international level, then you'll get an international classification. So,
Gotcha.
and with swimming, because all sports vary in how they
Of
determine
course.
classification.
Of course.
So
Yeah.
with swimming, they sit you on a bench and they do some movement work and they give you so many points. And if you, I think it's up to 14 points. If you get 14 points, then you get put into the pool, and that's when they decide your classification. If you don't get 14 points, then you're not classifiable. You're considered able-bodied.
Okay.
So,
It's a bit of a
uh,
what's the word? Bit of a prejudicial way to get started of the classification, if you don't mind me saying. Wow.
yeah, it's
Like,
pretty
if
full
if
on.
I'm being honest, I would put them in the pool first and see what they're able to do themselves,
Yeah,
sort of thing. In all honesty, that's how I would do it. I mean, that's just me, but wow.
yeah, it is. It's very interesting, and like for me, they were literally getting protractors out to check how much movement I have, and
I would feel like so. Talk about, like, sorry to interrupt, but like for me personally, as an able-bodied person, if I was put through that and they're trying to promote inclusivity and make people not feel like, less than or whatever, getting a protractor out and a measuring tape and whatnot would definitely make me feel the total opposite of what they're trying to achieve. I'm sorry, please
Yeah,
continue. That makes me mad. Oh,
it's this is, I guess, the side of disability sport that
mm,
people don't realize is that there has to be a point of where do we make it fair?
Yeah, of course.
How do we distinguish that someone like myself doesn't compete against a
Someone
paraplegic
with
in
no
swimming?
arms, sort of thing. Yeah,
Yeah, so
totally get that. Okay,
there is some real nitty
still
gritty
makes
side
me
of
mad a
it.
bit though, but I get it.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I didn't get my 14 points. I was told I was too able-bodied, and at
For
13,
swimming, for anyone who's listening, for swimming technically, other
just
sports may not, but just swimming at this point in Australia.
yeah, so just swimming.
Yeah.
I was told that my disability could be trained out of me.
Fuck off. I'm sorry, excuse my language, but Jesus, fuck off out of here with that.
There was so
Continue.
there was so much,
I'd be
you know,
so
and
mad.
yeah, it was just hard at 13
Mm.
years old. As a young woman going through puberty, being told you don't fit, kind of copped it on the chin. My parents weren't there. It was just me and the team.
Oh,
I was still allowed to compete. I just,
okay.
even if I had broken records or won medals, I wasn't going to get them. Um,
So what's the point
so
of competing then?
no, it was just like participation, which
Okay,
I'll cop because it's all resilience building.
that's true.
Um,
Character
and
building,
then,
absolutely.
yeah, so
It's
then
all part of your story, all part of your journey. Sorry to interrupt.
exactly.
Continue.
No, and then I came back to Perth.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a few conversations with my parent, like my family and the coaches in Perth, and they were like, look, we actually don't think this is fair. We think you need to get classified.
Mm.
I competed as an able-bodied athlete. I was getting disqualified in every event that I competed in as an able-bodied athlete because they were saying that my legs don't match up and my disability was impacting it. I had
So what the fuck did Paralympics or disabled sporting Australia? Like Jesus. Sorry,
so
continue.
it's
I'm still
just
mad at them right now.
no, it's just the unfortunately, like every sport has this different classification
Yes.
codes.
Yes.
Um and there are unfortunately going to be people that fall into the gray area and we have to accept that. And
Yeah.
that was really like, yes, it was a really challenging part of my life, but it also opened me up to something that was so beautiful, and that was wheelchair basketball. So I fought the system for 6 months, but there's only at such a young age, and with my parents, there's only so much that you can do before it becomes quite mentally taxing.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, all I wanted to do was play sport. I grew up in a very active family. All I wanted to do was be an athlete.
Okay.
And so there was this really great coach named Frank Ponta, and he was my swimming coach. Like he helped with my swimming stuff. So he pulled me aside one day and he said, look, this might not be the path, but how about we try something else? What about wheelchair basketball? You're tall. I was 6 foot by the time I was
Oh, wow.
14. So I was not going to be small. And he said, what about basketball? And I honestly thought he was joking. I really did, because like I am so uncoordinated. Like the idea of trying to dribble the ball and walk was really
and wheel the wheelchair
kind of
as
like wheel
well.
the wheelchair. But I took it and I said, okay. And I went down one day and I shot my first shot and I got it in. And he said, right, we're going to start training. And it started with just Tuesday nights in a backyard, like in a basketball court, in a shed in an industrial area. And then eventually it moved into states, and then it grew and I got asked to go to my first national camp in 2008. I think it was 2008. And then everything started building until eventually I was asked to
You could
represent
say the
Australia.
wheels started rolling in motion for that.
Yeah. And there was that I obviously had to go back through the classification process.
And how was that? Because that would have been daunting, that, because you would have thought, because of your previous experience, surely your mind would have been like, nah, they're not going to classify me for this. They're not going to this, that, the other. Or was there like no doubt? You were like, I'm confident in this sport with what I can do, etc.
It was 50-50. But I'm like, it's hard when you're on a bench and people don't see you walking or running. Whereas in wheelchair basketball, the way they classified me was they were actually watching me walk and my gait, and then they asked me to run, and I was like,
Good luck with
waddling.
that.
Yeah, and waddling, and then it was really funny. And then they did all the muscle tests and they checked everything, and they're like, well, you have got a noticeable discrepancy that
You
distinguishes
can't run on
you
the
from
court. Like, it's that simple.
yeah. So no, you can't participate at an able-bodied level. So let's classify, like, you're a 4.5. So I'm classified as the most minimal level of impairment in wheelchair
Okay.
basketball. which is a
But
4.5.
yeah, but still impaired enough to, for lack of a better term, be qualified for wheelchair basketball.
Yeah, yeah. So, and how it works is that you're only allowed 14 points on the court at one time. So instead of it being
Oh,
like,
isn't like, so 14 points being like your 4.5, someone else's, say, I don't know, whatever their points are, but the cumulative amount of points on the team on the court equal 14.
So
Okay.
and so when you think about team selections and when you think about combinations, like coaches, I don't envy our coaches, but you have to think about your combinations. Have you got a speed lineup? Have you got a defensive lineup? Have you got an offensive lineup? How does everyone fit into these combinations? How do we make it work? What are the numbers? So it's pretty cool because we're, instead of it just being like a team of 4.5s versus a team of 4.5s, it's all disabilities coming together and working together.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
For that common goal, which is absolutely awesome. And obviously, tangenting into your debut for the Gliders, to anyone who doesn't know, that's the wheelchair basketball national team of Australia, the Gliders. In 2009, what was it like, for you getting your call up? In 2009, I get to represent the green and gold in basketball.
It was pretty surreal. It was funny because that was a really big year for me in terms of breakthrough as a breakthrough athlete. So my very first international, and not many people know this, I was actually part of the under 23 World Championship team, which back in 2009 was mixed. It was men's and women's.
Okay.
And
as in like both in the same team sort of thing, or was it different, like men's comp, women's comp on the same day? No, okay, so mixed.
Mixed. Wow. And then 2011 they split it, so it was under 23 men's and under 25 women's.
Okay.
And so my first international, I was one of 7 women competing from around the world in 12
with men and against men as well, technically. Wow.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It actually is one of my favorite tournaments I've ever been to.
Did you win? How'd you go at the tournament?
We came 4th.
That's pretty good.
Which is pretty good. And the team that we went with, like the team that I traveled with, most of the guys are now in the national team or have gone on to be successful in other sports. So the likes of Dylan Alcott was in that team in 2009.
Shout out to Dylan Alcott.
Big names in wheelchair basketball and Yannick Blair. And then women as well. There was one other Australian female in Kobe Crispin who was with me. And it was just fun. It was just so much fun. And then came home and 2 weeks later traveled to Canada to compete for the Gliders for the first time. So I kind of got that taste of elite sport.
How was that 2-week turnaround, like, as in flying home jet lagged and then flying back to another country over the other side of the world again just 2 weeks later? What was that first? Because that was, you could say, technically the first, as you said, high intense athlete sort of level, 2-week turnaround, then you got to haul ass again. Like, what was that like?
It was pretty surreal because, I was also in year 11 at high school. And I was trying to do 6 TE subjects. So I was trying to get my university certificate to go through to. And that break was actually during exam time. And so
that's kind of good then, that 2 weeks you could do exams.
Yeah. And we also had the epidemic of swine flu in 2000.
Yeah. Jeez, I remember that.
So, it was pretty challenging, but it was also so exciting. I came home, went back to went to school, kind of laid really low. Like, people knew I played sport, they just didn't really understand.
But they didn't know to what extent. Yeah.
And then when I was like, oh, I'm going to Canada, they're like, what?
Pardon?
I'll be back in a few weeks, don't mind me. So, but going back to the Gliders and that being my first exposure to an international tournament with the girls, I couldn't have thought of a better tournament to actually be at as the first tournament, because it was a friendly tournament. It wasn't like a major AOZ or
that's good.
World Championships. It was
or a Paralympics.
Yeah, it was like a friendly. I didn't play that many minutes, but to me, I think everyone's
there with the squad was the experience maker sort of thing.
And taking it all in and learning and watching and seeing these incredible athletes from not just Australia, but from around the world. I think it was the Dutch, which are now the world #1 women's team in the world, and Canada obviously were there. And I think there was one more. But, you know, having these teams all together and seeing these incredible athletes, I was like, oh my gosh. And I look at the likes of Janet McLaughlin, who she's since retired. She's from Team Canada. And then there were athletes like Inge Hudsing from Netherlands, who I looked at and I was like, I want to be like that. Like, I want to be able to shoot the ball like that and, you know, move the way they do. And that exposure enabled me to kind of pick apart my game as I got older and start creating my own style of wheelchair basketball.
That's amazing to hear that. Honestly, that's so awesome. And only a few short years later, you got the Paralympics call up, the 2012 London. So, if anything, a homecoming of sorts, because it was in London in the UK.
Yeah.
First of all, what was it like finding out you're going to be a Paralympic athlete to then going to London, all that sort of stuff?
I bawled my eyes out. I remember, and it was a bit weird, to be honest. Because obviously I've never, apart from the World Championships, I went to the Worlds in 2010, and I was a baby. And then the Paralympics, the selection process of that was very interesting. And you kind of like, you've had a national camp, you're all on the court, and then calling people in one by one.
Oh, that would be so grueling. I'd be sweating so much.
And we then exited out another door. So we actually didn't.
So you didn't see them. You didn't see the ones that rolled away. Like, you just didn't see them.
No, you went to a different room. So you were on the court, went to the meeting room, and then walked out to another room, which is actually pretty cool because for the girls that don't get picked, at least then they can take space away from the girls that do get picked.
Yes.
Deal with their emotions the way they need to.
Yeah.
And then come back into it when they're ready to celebrate everyone and the success of the program. So, but I was in the final 3 on the court waiting to get the meeting.
At that point, I'd be getting more. I'd be like, I'd be like, is this going alphabetically or what? Because I'm getting so nervous.
Yeah. So, and then I went in and we had a conversation, and then they were like, we just want to congratulate you because we'll be taking you. And I just sat there and I cried and I came out, and, you know, I was the baby of the team. I was 19 years old.
Wow.
Which doesn't sound that young, but it, like, in terms of
sport, absolutely, yeah.
And then it was just like a big roller coaster. I did dedicate most of my life. Once I graduated high school, it was all about basketball. I was, you know, pulling big hours on the court. I was training with not just some of the best women in the world, but I was also training with the best men. You know, 4 of the starting 5 of the Paralympic gold medal team from Beijing in 2008 were from WA.
Yeah, wow.
And I took all that in and, you know, trained with them. I worked with them. I picked their brains. Like, I just wanted to do as much as possible. And then, you know, the coach was lucky. The coach of the national team at the time was from WA as well. So I would go and do extra shooting sessions with him. And I just breathed sport until I got that call up. And then, you know, the work got even more because it was like, right, well, that's that goal ticked off. Let's go.
Now I've got to actually work towards winning that now.
Yeah. And you train hard, and as hard as possible so that when you're in tournament, you can actually kind of enjoy it a little bit as well.
To the point where exactly, it's kind of like how they say for exams in particular, you know, the trial exams are a lot harder than the actual exams. Similar sort of respect when it comes to the prep. You literally bust your ass in the preparation and the training, so that way the game is as easy as possible for you when you're playing it, when you're, you know, so you don't get as gassed as quick, that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, once we got to like the trip itself was really long. So we left Australia as a team and we traveled to Germany. No, we went to Netherlands. And then from Netherlands, we went to Wales. And we were in Cardiff, and that's where the whole Paralympic team, all the swimmers, all the track athletes, everyone was there. We had a staging camp, and that's where all our uniforms got fitted appropriately, our opening and closing ceremony uniforms. They made sure our jackets and our blazers were right. And then we got a bus from Cardiff into London. And once we got into the village and got into our rooms and could just feel like home, it was electric. It was
And
absolutely electric.
and what was it like, as we just mentioned earlier in the recording, that you are originally from England, not London, of course, but it was a homecoming of sorts. Did you sort of get a bit of goosebumps sort of thing about being, holy shit, I'm competing for Australia in England at a Paralympics sort of thing?
There were parts of me that, it wasn't so much like a rivalry of like I'm Australian but I'm Brit. I had a lot of pride.
That's
Um,
awesome.
I had a lot of pride, and the fact that, and I get really emotional talking about it
Well,
because,
go for it.
no, my grandfather passed away last year, unfortunately.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Oh, 2 years ago almost actually now. Wow. But he was my biggest fan. When I wanted to told him like I'm going to play wheelchair basketball, he actually helped pay for my first basketball chair. And in
That's so nice.
2010, when I went to my first World Championships in Birmingham, he traveled up with my auntie. They drove up from Portsmouth to Birmingham,
That's a
and
trip.
to be able to compete at a Paralympic Games as his grandchild, and he
He was
came.
able to go and see because it's in England as well.
Yeah, and mum and dad were there, and it was just so, so special. And when he did pass away, we put both of my jerseys on his coffin, so
Oh, we love
he was always there. So, I think about that and the support and the love that was given to me to be able to get to that point, and nothing beats that. That was like that for me. Like winning the silver medal was awesome, but those are the moments that I think about the most, is the fact that I could look in the crowd and just see my parents and my grandfather, and all the people that had actually got me to that point, and know that I'm doing right by them.
Yeah, that's incredible to hear. And tangenting off that sort of topic as well, but not unrelated. Obviously, Paralympics and the Olympics and whatnot usually go for about 2 weeks. Did you end up making a bit of a holiday of it after that and actually going and seeing your family down in Portsmouth area?
I would have loved to, but
Oh,
there's actually rules that,
oh,
yeah. So
that's shit. But continue.
it was hard, but because we've got major sponsors in Qantas,
Yeah.
and there's so many companies that come together to enable the Paralympic teams to travel and compete. So Qantas are our major sponsors. They have been for all of the games that I've been at. And one of the rules, unless you can get special like requests slipped through, is that we all have to travel home together.
Okay.
So we all get on a charter flight and we fly from London to Sydney. And when we landed in Sydney, there was a big guard of, like, when we left London, there was a big guard of honor. The fire trucks were there with the hoses. And then when
Yeah.
we landed in Sydney, the same thing happened. And then we all got off the plane, and instead of like going straight through to customs, we were all taken off to a back room. And that's where we got to meet, politicians. I think Julia Gillard was there, like some pretty big
Yeah,
names.
prime ministers at the time, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and you got to meet these people, have conversations. There was a bit of media, so and then it was like, right, you're connecting flights, you've got to get going. So that's when we all dipped and got home. But yeah, I would have loved to say. I actually haven't. I went back to England for the first time in 15 years in 2018.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I had, like, even though I'd been back for sport, I had never actually stopped to take
Yeah.
time to go down and
No,
see.
that's fair. But I mean,
Yeah,
I'm sure you would have been able to have a chance to actually talk to your grandfather and all that while you were there at some point, whether it was courtside or whatever sort of thing.
yeah, exactly. And like, I'm really lucky that my family are quite supportive. And so, when we went to the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham, my cousin and her partner drove up and I got to see them. And it, like, yeah, it's just, it is
That's
what it is, unfortunately. And
it
it
is,
is,
but that's awesome that you still made do. You were able to still see them and all that sort of stuff, just not afterwards, sort of thing, which is
yeah.
unfortunate. Obviously mentioning the retirements and whatnot, you did recently announce your retirement in November last year. How's the transition going for you so far?
It's really tough. I
Yeah.
don't think, no, like brutally honest, like I don't think a lot of athletes, we really talk about the processes of retirement. And, like going into it, I think it shocked a lot of people when I made the decision. I don't think
Well,
people saw.
I guess because, sorry to interrupt, from an outsider looking in, because you're still technically so young, you could, at the age you're at, potentially make another Paralympics or two, or a Paralympics and then a Com Games sort of thing. Whereas, yeah, so I can understand that from that respect. Sorry, please continue.
No, and also I think because I was what people would deem at the peak of my tournament, like of my
Okay.
game. Like last year I was voted World All-Star 5 and top point
Oh
scorer
wow.
in the world. Yeah, so
And you're
like
like,
people
no, I'm
probably were
dipping
like,
by.
what? And but like I actually went into Tokyo 2020 being like, I think this is going to be my last games.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to go. And then I had a stellar tournament, and that was because of the
Yeah.
coach.
And
With
how did sorry to interrupt real quick. Obviously 2012, 2020, totally different years, especially given a COVID year, etc. What were the differences like?
very different, very
Yeah.
strange. But it's also very hard to draw a comparison, not just because of the circumstances that we were in, but also the gliders weren't at the 2016 Paralympics. So we had this massive hiatus. And the age gap, I was 19 and I was 19 in London. And then what, with 2021, I was 28 years old.
Yeah, wow.
So it was very different because I had grown exponentially in my sport, and the journey of the team was very different as well from what it looked like back then. And I think, you think about all those elements, and it is a very different, for you, like
Yeah.
everyone's personal journey is very different. It was weird not having the supporters in the crowd behind
Yep.
you, or like, I look back at footage from London and you have like they literally blocked the seats out, and you
Yeah.
would just see green and gold and Aussie flags and people screaming for you, and you're like, whoa, we didn't have that. You would
Yeah.
have a few staff members in the crowd
The
and
referee, and that's about it.
the referee, and that's about it. And like empty stadiums, it feels really weird because you train to prepare for full stadiums. So you have lots of loud music. You have to be really loud, like vocally, like communication is so big. So it's like, oh, this is so weird. It's like, oh, what's going on? But I'm actually really glad that we got to do that in that time. And I think about all the support that enabled us to be able to get to Tokyo. I was really lucky that we were still able to travel during
Yeah.
COVID. We were the lucky ones. And whilst we would have to isolate when we got home, WA Police and the national government and the WA Institute of Sport had actually created systems in place, that meant that we could train. So even though I was in isolation for 2 weeks, we would leave for an hour or two a day and go train in a special facility that would then get completely cleaned down before it was open to anyone else or open at all. And it's all of that support that gets you to that point, and you kind of go, wow, like we made it through.
Yeah. And so tangenting back into the retirement sort of topic, as you said, you were literally at what most would consider the legit peak of your form, your career, this, that, the other, and then out of the blue to everyone, you're like, no, I'm gonna, I'm retiring. So first of all, what was the decision process like behind that?
So there was a few things. 15 years of international sport is a very long time for anyone.
Yeah.
And I work. I'm a student. I work. I have bills to pay. Like I still have things that I need to do. And unfortunately, like there comes a point where my priorities have shifted from being elite athlete, and then it starts going like, okay, well, I maybe need to be a bit of an adult and live a human
an adult. Yep.
Yeah. And then there was also the side that it got really hard to leave home. Like I did think I was going to retire after Tokyo. Turns out I wasn't. I was like, you know what, I'm ready to go a bit longer. Like I think I've got a bit more gas in my tank. And then last year, I was being selected for teams, and then on my drive to the airport in tears because I didn't
Oh
want to
wow.
leave home. And people didn't
Wow.
know that. I was very, I think the only person that really saw it was my best friend, and fellow teammate who also retired,
Yeah.
Georgia Inglis, and she
She was like,
saw
"Look, if you're retiring, we retiring."
it. Well, actually, confession, she made her announcement before me. So
Oh wow. Okay.
yeah. And she's pregnant now. She's having a little baba, so it's very exciting. But like all of those things, I just didn't want to be. I didn't want to be away from home. I felt like it was time, and it's not to say that I won't come back in the future. It's like I love this sport. I love this sport so much, and I've dedicated over half of my life to this sport. I'm 30, and
Yeah.
15 years of my life was dedicated to just international wheelchair basketball, let alone the
Yeah.
2 years into that.
Yeah.
So
And if we're talking sport in general, not just the basketball, we're talking literally a good 3/4 of your life as well.
yeah, exactly. So, it was time. There was something in me that just went, it's time to see what's on the other side. And that like, pardon my French when I say this, but it's fucking scary.
I was literally going to say, was it scary? And you just
It was,
confirmed that. Yeah.
it is fucking scary because I actually don't know who I am away from sport.
Yeah. Wow.
Like, other
You're
than the
trying to
fact,
find an identity outside of. Yeah. Wow.
yeah, other than the fact that I know I work in communications and content. I love clothes and I love my dog and I have a partner and all of these things. But actually, who am I? Who am I to my
Mm.
core if I'm not an athlete? And that's not to say like that is taken away from me now. Like, I will always be an athlete. I will always get to say I represented Australia at the highest level, won a silver medal at the Paralympics and at the Commonwealth Games. And I've had all of these achievements. I will always be an athlete and get to tell my story. However, I've now got to find the other facets of my life. And I honestly thought I was doing that. I honestly felt like away from sport when I was being very conscious of when I was at events. It's not, this is Amber and I'm an athlete. It was like, oh, hi, I'm Amber. And oh, what do you do? Well, I'm a communications content manager and I do this and this. And then always being an athlete was the last thing I would say.
Yeah.
But once I made that decision, like, I was really lost. And it took some hard conversations from some good girlfriends to actually be like, girl, you need to figure it out because
Mm.
we're just watching you spiral and we don't know what's going on. And I was literally spiraling to a point where I was like watching my body change.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I was freaking out. Like, I didn't know who I was or what I was doing, and it was really hard. But I'm on a good path now.
That's good. That's good that you're
um,
out of this. That you're out of the free fall and you're climbing back up, sort of thing.
yeah, and I have some good goals in place, and I'm kind of just working towards all of that now, and just enjoying discovering
Yeah.
like what actually apart from sport, what makes me tick. And I'm also very lucky. Like, I'm not completely out of it. I'm not completely out of the sport because
Mm.
my partner plays. So
Oh, right.
I
As in
still,
plays basketball.
yeah, he plays wheelchair basketball. So he also plays. That's how we met.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, so I kind of still get to have that little bit of action in the
Yeah.
sport, but not actually be
You're
in the
still
sport.
going to get your fix without actually having to
Yeah,
compete. Yeah. No,
I
that's
just
that's
want to be a
actually so
wag.
awesome. Yeah. That's exactly. That's actually so awesome. Obviously, goes without saying, will you be watching the Paralympics and Olympics this year?
Absolutely. Our men just qualified on the weekend. They got the top spot in the AOZ championships, which means that they will be going to Paris. The girls came third, which means that they are heading to another tournament to qualify.
To qualify. Yep.
Yeah.
Fingers
But
crossed for the girls.
fingers crossed, and fully supporting them. Still really good mates with a number of them within the team. Still have so much love for them, and I like seeing what the progression of the program looks like
Yeah.
without myself in it. And there are elements that are really hard. When watching on the weekend and watching these girls, there was a part of me that did feel a little bit guilty. But then I was also like, this is really good. Like,
Yeah.
this is actually, and it's okay to feel this way, but this is really good for them. So it's exciting times ahead for the whole program and the whole system.
Your feet deserve a break, guys. And what better way to treat them right than with a new pair of thongs? And guys, Toey Thongs has you covered. No word of an actual lie. These thongs are the comfiest pairs I've ever owned. Straight out of the package, soft as heck. They come in single plugger and double plugger. I'm currently rocking the single pluggers. Yeah, guys, for just $30 per solo pair. And the more you buy, the cheaper they get. And who doesn't love cheap thongs, They also offer a monthly subscription to receive a pair every month for 6 months. So if you're a thong fiend or just need a new pair, be sure to head to toeythongs.com. Use our code LifeandSport15 for 15% off at checkout. So we'll finish up with some quick fire and then 2 final questions. First quick fire is Apple or Android?
Apple.
Okay, absolutely. What's your favorite movie of all time?
Oh, that's really hard. It's like asking someone their favorite song. I think it's gonna have to be The Notebook.
Oh, I hate The Notebook, but that's fair enough. Okay, then obviously this is one that I haven't asked anyone before yet. What's your least favorite movie that you will avoid? If anyone mentions it, you're like, nah, I hate it, don't like it.
Oh, I'm gonna cop so much hate for this.
Yep.
Because I've got like 3 that I would never watch again.
Name all 3.
One of them's Lord of the Rings.
I've never watched The Lord of the Rings all the way through, and I don't plan to.
The other one is Braveheart.
Yeah, you see, I don't hate it, but I definitely have to be in the mood to watch it.
Oh, it took me 8 sittings to watch through it. I couldn't.
It is a lot, absolutely.
And I'm not a big Star Wars person.
Okay, that's where we differ. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a nerd. I haven't watched The Mandalorian or any of that, but I definitely can sit down and watch 1 or 2 of them at a time. But I respect that. I definitely respect Braveheart as well, because it's a great movie, but it is a lot of a movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I actually find it really hard to sit through movies, to be honest. Like they have to really capture me. I'm more of just like a TV show, Netflix.
Okay. Well, then what are you currently binging then?
So we just finished Yellowstone.
Okay. I've been recommended that heaps. I haven't watched it yet though.
It's so good. And then what is the one? Oh, I love true crime stuff. So currently watching the first 48 on Stan.
That's a great show. Yep.
Yeah, I've been just watching all of that.
Very nice. I just finished binge watching for I don't want more times than I want to admit. It's probably up to the 7th or 8th time now I've binged this from start to finish. But I just finished binging again Ted Lasso. It's just such a great show.
I've not watched it, but I've heard so many things.
If you love sport, you'll absolutely love Ted Lasso. I don't know if it's on any other streaming services, but it is on Apple TV.
Yeah.
But yeah, wow. Next question: how do you like your steak? If you eat meat, that is.
Rare.
Rare, okay.
Rare. Yeah.
Jeez, okay, that's the first time someone said rare to like blue. Most common, obviously, is medium rare, and well done is an atrocity. So we don't need to include that.
I like it still mooing, pretty much. Like with butter.
Get out of my head, because every single time someone on the podcast says medium rare, and I'm like, yep, I just don't want my steak still mooing. Every single time. But no, honestly, I could deal with rare as well, just a bit more blood, but I can't deal with blue. Two final questions are: what's 3 life lessons you know now that you wish you would tell your younger self?
It's hard. The first one is, and this is something that my dog's just walked out the room. The first one is that someone else's opinion of you is none of your business.
Ooh. That's very introspective, because I was waiting for when you said that someone else's opinion of you, I thought it was doesn't matter, but no, it doesn't.
It's none of your business. What people think of me is actually none of my business.
But that's so interesting. Wow. Yeah. Okay, and what's the other 2?
What are things I wish I could tell my younger self? that life isn't linear.
Ooh, that's another good one. Jeez.
Yeah,
We're
because I
getting
think like,
philosophical up in this.
I think like when we're as an athlete, we kind of look at things and go, well, that's my goal.
Yeah.
This is my goal, and I'm going to do everything in my power to do that goal.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next one, like from there, then like when like going through retirement now, I'm like, well, actually, that's not how it works. I don't just work hard, get my goal. There's
Right.
actually like A, B, C, D, E, X, like all the way through to Z.
And then there's everything that life can throw at you in that time as well.
Yeah. So that was pretty wild. That's like a good one. So life's not linear, and what people think of me, like other people's opinions, is none of your business. And if you truly love it, it's not meant to be hard.
Yeah, like because honestly, that one definitely so true. You know, that's just with everything in life, not just relationships, not just sport, but just everything. And not just that, but also tangenting on that sort of advice is if you're not making it look easy, you're not doing it right either.
Yeah.
Like, as I'm sure you can attest as a professional athlete to some extent, the podcast in general, some I'll probably edit this bit out, but some people, they'll be talking the maddest hate in the comments, this, that, the other, but they don't see everything that goes on behind, the hard work that goes on behind this sort of stuff. Same with the athletes, all they see is the finished product on the court. They don't see the hours and hours of dedication and training to make it look easy on the court, sort of thing. So,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely agree. My final question is,
Yeah.
what's next for Amber Merritt?
I don't know. I mean, I'm just like leaning into life at the moment and enjoying yeah, I'm just enjoying what's out there in the world.
Well, you've got the
Obviously-
Paralympics coming up to be able to watch, and the Olympics,
yeah,
and yeah,
yeah, exactly. If anyone actually wants a girl to do some commentary, yeah.
absolutely. Well, I mean, I don't see why they wouldn't, because especially for the Paralympics and the Paralympic basketball, absolutely.
Yeah. So no, that's it. Like I'm just kind of seeing what the road has for me.